Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we do Django apps building, and we're going to continue on the homeschool application that I've been working on for a long time. And we're going to work on the referral system that I've been working on. We've done a lot of the user-facing sides for the actual customer, and now we need to do the back-end portion of it that will actually send out emails. So to catch you up, in case you've never watched the stream before, I want to have some kind of mechanism in my app that a user who is using the app can share with others and encourage them to sign up. And if they do, ultimately, I would give them the customer who sent out the referral some kind of discount for the service. So we're avoiding a lot of over developing on this particular project, because there's not a lot of demand in it right now. But I want the bones to be there so that if the app picks up, I want that feature to be accessible so there is an opportunity to share, and so that all of the marketing doesn't have to come directly from me as the marketer of the app, that the actual users, if they are really enjoying the app, can share it with other homeschooling families that they might know. So that's the project that we're going to work on tonight. We're going to work on this particular issue, and we'll get into how I'm going to implement this. I'm not actually totally sure yet. I have some ideas, but we'll get into that. As always, you're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. This is you're watching my progress as I work on this app, but it is also intended to be kind of a back and forth about how to do web development in general. My experience is I've been doing Python web development for many, many years at this point, so I can share what I know. Before we get into it, though, I want to take the opportunity to thank those who support me on Patreon. If you are finding this material useful after you start watching it and are able to financially support me, that would be awesome. But I want to thank my patrons of Rupert, Andrew, Patrick, Eric, Philip, Miguel, and Peter. They help support me financially and make it possible for me to do podcasts without taking on all of that cost and burden myself, and just generally supporting me, which is really great. So I'm really grateful. Okay, let's get into some code. So let's stare at this right away and see where we're at. We have this referral model in the system, and the view that I created is a very simple form view, and I can show it off to remind people of what this looks like. But what I'm asking a customer to do is submit an email address. And once that email address is submitted, it'll create this referral record that you see here that has just a few fields that we're keeping track of. We're keeping track of the user that actually did the request, the email address that they submitted, and then a timestamp and a status field. That's it. And with the flow, once we start it up here, is in the app, and it's on the settings page because I kind of want it to be out of the way. But it's sort of this call to action that has a button that says, hey, give me an email address and we'll create it. There's a note that there's a to-do here because there's still some documentation that needs to be written. We're not going to work on that particular documentation. I'm not even sure I'm going to do that on stream because it's not totally exciting. It's kind of cleaning up of the product, but it is something that I needed as a note for myself to do. But you may, as a viewer, not care to watch me document things. Maybe you do, and we can talk through product documentation, but we'll see how that goes. So tonight, we need to focus on the actual sending of mail. And I am already using a system to do mail sending, and the system is called Django AnyMail. I can show it here, the main page. So Django AnyMail is a really cool service that hooks up into Django's mail kind of framework and SMTP support, and hooks into all these different mail vendors. So whether you want to use SendGrid or Postmark or Mailgun or whatever, you can pop in your API credentials, and AnyMail will take care of the details of that. And so what me as a user, or you as a user, if you choose to use AnyMail, is to call the SendMail API that Django provides, and AnyMail will take care of the rest. Hey, Shivens93, welcome back. Oh, good. Glad you're using Git to get your issues done. It's a good project management tool. It's a pretty simple tool for a one-person group. So I found it as a very useful to-do list to get my own stuff managed. I think it's good for projects. So anyway, the AnyMail system is pretty dead simple. I've already configured it, so I don't really need to do that because the project has this for other flows. Like when a user signs up, it automatically sends out emails. So there's already all of that machinery is there. We're not going to go over that tonight, but I actually have not called the SendMail interface in my app yet. I was depending on Django all-auth to do that for the registration emails that it's being sent out. So that's actually being done by a different third-party system. It shows, I think it actually shows off the composability of making a very modular design, where if you design it such that there's an interface to work towards and the actual implementation details are worked out by something else, then two things can talk nicely to each other. Does the email system cost money? Yes, they ultimately would. I'm using SendGrid, and SendGrid offers a free forever tier, but it is a very, very limited number of emails. I think it's on the order of like 10 per day, something quite low. So that has clear disadvantages. If you actually had a service that gained any significant amount of popularity, 10 emails, especially if you're doing a bunch of things that trigger emails, is quite a low number. But the pricing can be reasonable if your app kind of grows. I guess it also depends on where you are in the world. There's different costs to different countries that you live in, so I can't speak for all of them. But you can see here that there's actually quite a number of offerings, and you can go research on different ones. SendGrid is one that I've used in the past. I'm pretty comfortable with it, and it had that free forever tier, which was useful for me for my initial purposes of getting a product out there, and just knowing that I'm only going to have a few signups per month. So having 10 emails a day is fine. Okay, so let's dig into how we're going to do this. So the flow is somebody submits their email in that form, and it creates this referral object, and it starts it out in a pending status. Okay, so what we can do from that is then have some kind of task. I don't have any background task system, so I'm not using Celery or Huey or any of these other systems to have a separate process that's running. Instead, what I'm doing when I need stuff that needs to operate in the background, I'm currently using Heroku's scheduled tasks, I think it's called. There's an ability to set a task that Heroku will run periodically at your desired frequency. And the way that they make money off of that is, they're obviously not doing this out of the goodness of their heart, is they make money on the running time of that task. So if I made a kind of cron task that ran every minute, well, that server time is going to start adding up, because every minute there'll be something running and running and running. My current tasks that I run, I have another background task that does, well, I don't even remember anymore. Let's see what other, I run it in terms of like a Django management command. So let's see what I got. Right. So I made a task that this is actually very similar to what we're going to be doing this evening, that will expire trials. And it runs once a day. And so you can imagine that the time that it takes to run this amount of code is very short. So it essentially cost me nothing. There's a little bit of extra cost, but it was like pennies. So we're going to do something similar. And what I'm going to do in the documentation for this referral system is it's not going to be immediate. I'm going to tell people that it's not immediate. My hope is that given the understanding that it's not an immediate system, so somebody can't say, hey, I'm going to refer you to School Desk, which is the name of the product, and expect an email in your box like right now so that you can sign up. I need to communicate that well, because I think with a lot of these systems, there is an expectation that the email will be nearly immediate. And so I just need to communicate that well. But by having this low frequency, I think it will help keep costs down a lot. Not that it's a super big deal, but I just don't want to be spending tons of money on an app that is not wildly popular at this point. And it's something that I could also easily change. So if I see a significant uptick in the usage of the app and the usage of the referral system, that probably means that I'm starting to have customers that will actually start paying for stuff, which is more revenue and what can actually support more operational cost. So at that stage, I would imagine I would need to start paying for a paid tier of SendGrid, for example. But also, without switching to a dedicated background worker task that is firing every time one of these is triggered, I could still do a cron-like system that does polling, essentially, is what it would be doing. And it would run at a more frequent basis. So I could, instead of saying, like, I'm thinking right now of doing even something like every 6 hours or something like that. So four times a day. I could switch to hourly. I could kind of gradually shrink that time until it merits its having an actual dedicated background task, at which point I'll start paying for that and get a lot of other benefits. Because frankly, dealing with Heroku's cron system, while cheap and convenient, is operationally like not the best way. It is a design, and it's a simplistic design that can probably get me pretty far. But if I get to a stage where I need to be doing a bunch of stuff that is intended to run kind of in the background of the web application, then I probably want to reach for some other tools. But I don't need to do that today. Okay, so that's the framing for what we're going to do. And I think, as I said, I'm going to treat this as a separate kind of command. So we'll model it like this expire trials command. And so it's going to be very, very similar to this actually. And the command flow, just to outline it, is going to be get referral instances, get referrals that are in pending, send the email, and mark them as sent. Yeah. I'm going to put it in the chat just so other people can see it in the future. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So let's dig into that, see where we're going to put it, and we'll talk about management commands because it's not something that everybody has to do all the time. And so give you an understanding if you are newer to Django. But let's talk briefly about what a command is. So when we have a management command, and I'm calling the management commands for a very specific name because Django has this file that you use as an interface into a bunch of tools that are exposed through the system. And you get that tool through manage.py, which comes with the scaffold that the project that Django will produce for you if you are generating your own app. And it can outline all of the commands that are available. And you can see that these are the set that come with Django itself. But notice these other areas. So there's account and auth, like there's a bunch of other things that are in here. And there's Django extensions is actually a thing that I added that has a ton of them. But these commands are things that you can hook into as well, which is exactly what I did with that expired trials. So what it does is it gives you a quick way to make a script that you can execute quickly in the context of a Django application and run some Django code, connect to the database, and then exit. And so that's exactly what the kind of cron functionality of Heroku expects with the scheduler is it expects a command that you can pass in that's going to return a good or a bad status when it's done. So that's the interface that Heroku is expecting. And Django provides all the tools to make these commands. So we're going to make a command. It's based on a certain file name convention and putting it in the right spot. And then it will expose that command, and then we can start working with it. So the first thing to do is actually make the necessary structure. So let's go over to the Referrals app. And we're in the Referrals app here. And we're going to create a new directory, and the directory is called management. And this is just something that you have to do to follow the appropriate structure that Django expects. Why don't we do, let's see, let's have that up. We can have both up, and that can be our reference. So in the migrations directory, this needs to be, the management directory, this needs to be a Python package. So we need to add an init.py file, and I'm going to save that. It doesn't have to have anything in it. It just needs, this is just the signal to Python that it's a package. And we need to create another directory in here called commands, and create that directory. And this also needs to be a package. So we add another init.py file, which can also be empty, doesn't matter. And this is where we're actually going to create our command file. And so we want to name it with the thing that we want to use. So let's say, what is this thing doing? I want to frame it in terms of an action, because I think that is the most sensible approach. These are actions that you're trying to run. And we're trying to work with referrals, and we're sending emails about referrals. So in my mind, the most appropriate name is Send Referrals. And I want it to be plural because it's going to handle them all at once. That's just the way it's going to happen. So there is a flaw to this strategy, which should be highlighted, and that is if there's a problem sending an email, and let's say an email fails and raises an exception, then any other pending referrals that might be happening at that time are not going to go out. And that's unfortunate, but that's what it is. I think, though, that doing this in a loop for this stage is a pretty safe operation. So we've got our send referrals file, and I'm going to frankly just steal everything that's in this expire trials command. And in fact, now that we've stolen it all, we don't need that. So we're working in the send referrals file here, and now we can kind of modify this to what we need. So let's say let's hint that we're going to want some stuff to write out. So let's leave those standard out file lines for a minute, although this is now an F string that's unused. So let's ditch this. Also, it's highlighting a bunch of things that are no longer in use. We might bring them back in a minute, but I want to get all of the warnings out. So we're starting from a fresh, clean spot. So let's get rid of all this stuff. So now we're down to the minimum, and we have a command, and let's finish it off. So send any pending referral emails. That's what we're doing. With this much, we should have enough to be able to see this show up. We should be able to verify that we have the right structure. And so looking at this now, if we come to here, there's referrals, there's the send referrals command, and we can also take this one step further and call it. So let's call send referrals. Okay, and it's writing those lines that don't mean anything for this scenario, but are something that we can reuse as kind of start and end states. And this is kind of useful. Why would I include this? So this background scheduler task is going to run at whatever frequency, and it's by writing to standard out, it can capture those logs. They would be logs that would show up somewhere in Heroku. So you could kind of monitor, did this actually work? Did it ever get called? It's a signal that we can use. So let's put in some details. Let's say Let's say fetch pending referrals to send. And then we can finish it with, we can have a sent count that will update as with each one that we send. Sure, why not? And we'll say 0. And then we turn this into an F string, and we'll say sent count, whoops, and referrals. And let's use the sent, not send, past tense. So we should be able to rerun this command, and now it has messaging that is appropriate for the command, and it's got a variable, and we see that the F string is working. So I'm not one into testing too much with like in an automated fashion on what goes to standard out. So here is an example where I'm kind of just getting the visual stuff right now. We're doing this test here, seeing that it works, and then we'll go in and add some actual tests of our own to handle the functionality. So the other file that I had, the expire trials, was in the accounts app. So there probably, my guess is there is a test. There it is. There's a test commands file, and we can see how that was structured. So it looks like what I did for those was, instead of, there's a couple ways you can call this. Django gives you some testing tools so that if you want to invoke a command in the style that it would be invoked in the command line. So if you want to test that certain argument passing is working, and there's all sorts of stuff that commands can do, you can call it that way. And I think it's called check command, I think is the name of the test function that you run. And you basically give it a check command with an actual string of the things you want to call, the parameters you want to pass, and so on. For our purposes, I don't want to do that. I think it's easier to follow this kind of pattern where we can create the command itself, the command object, and call it the handle method, and get all the same benefit, and just call it like calling any other object. From there, we can do some assertions on the output. So I'm going to take a similar approach. And so let's go into the referrals area and go into the tests for that. And I'm just gonna put them side by side for now, because again, I'm gonna cheat and steal from my previous test code, because it's got a lot of this already set up, like, oh, I need string IO and I need all these other things, blah, blah, blah. So we'll say test commands is the file. And let's just steal all of this stuff at the top, the whole test, why not? And we'll drop it in here. Again, I don't need this other file anymore, so I'll close it so I don't modify it by accident. And here we want to do what? We want to do, so let's change the name of the test case. Let's start there. So change it to send referrals. And we're going to keep string IO. I don't think we need to have an account to work with. We're going to need a user, but we're going to get that through a factory. We need to change the command. So we actually don't want from the accounts command. We want to do from homeschool referrals management commands. Unfortunately, it's way down in here, but that's okay. Send referrals import command. So now those are going to conflict. That's fine. So we'll delete this, and we'll start to clean up here. Assert false because we want it to fail. We don't need the factory or the account or the constants. We don't need date time, and we don't need the time zone stuff. So that's gotten us down to the minimum here, and then we'll change the test name. So this will be our happy path test. This will be we want this to have, what do we want? I want to be able to prove that this thing can, in a loop, send multiple emails. Because the last command, the expires trials command, can operate on the bunch of them and say, okay, all of these trials, they're all old. If there were multiple of them, we can expire them in one fell swoop as one action. With these emails, we have to loop over them to send an email, which is an API call, and then go to the next one and do it again. So that's the process. So we want to test sends referrals. This is our happy path. And realizing that I have a typo in that doc string, I'm going to go fix that quickly in the other file. Got 4 quotes here. That's not right. Okay. So let's get rid of that. This is just triple quotes for a doc string, so I don't want to confuse people. And we'll say the command sends pending referrals. So ultimately we want to assert, let's put our to-dos of like, what is it we want to assert on? We want to assert that there are 2 referrals. I'm going to use two pieces of things in our setup state. That there are 2 referrals in the sent status. And I also want to assert that SendMail is called twice. Yeah, that feels right. So that's what we ultimately want. So let's run this much, see how it does. It should run fine and fail because it has an assert false there. So with this basic command in place, we're now prepared to start filling it in with the data that we care about. And we can get the referral factory. So that's our next step. So from homeschool referrals, tests, factories, which is where I put this, we're going to get the referral factory. We're also going to need the homeschool referral model itself. So we'll say referrals, models, import referral, and that will give us access to the status attribute when we're using the factory. The factory does default to pending because that's the default for the field. But I want to be explicit and prove that both of the referrals I create are in a pending state. So there is an obvious delta, because what I wouldn't want to happen is, like, let's say at some point in the future, I change the default to be from pending to sent. Then the final assertion is automatically going to be true, and it wouldn't show an actual behavioral change. So we want to make sure that with our test data, we are setting it up to be something different, and that'll be really important, because and when we do our filter for the assertion, we're going to use that status. Well, it'll be really apparent in a second here. So let's say referral factory, and then status is equal to referral dot status dot pending, and we want 2 of these. I'll create 2 separate instances. And now we have enough to do our assertion as well. So we can say assert referral objects filter with a status of referral status sent. And we want that count to be equal to 2. Because we have 2 of them. The way the testing framework works is there's no other records in the database right now. So these will be the only 2 referral records in the database. So we can rely on that number. Even if the test suite was all running and other tests were creating referrals, between each unit test, all of the data that's in there is rolled back so that it doesn't exist anymore. It's never actually, it's never committed. It's kind of left in an open transaction that is rolled back. So we can say with confidence, without worrying that other tests are going to break this, that we will have more than 2 if a bunch of tests ran. So that's the assertion for that first to do. And then the other thing that we need is we need to get we need to mock in SendMail, which isn't even imported yet, and ensure that it is called twice. So looking back at the AnyMail documentation, you can see what we need to call. We need to call SendMail and pass in a bunch of stuff. That will fill in the stuff later, but right now, what we just need to assert is that SendMail is there and that it's called multiple times. And so unit test has the mock library. Oops. Oh, come on. There it is. Next thing over. Which has like a called count or something. Oh man, what's that property called? There is a property that tells you how many times it's called. And I can't remember what it is. Well, here are all the asserts. There's call. There it is. Okay, just call count. So that's enough to set this up properly. So we can come to the top here and say from unit test import mock. And we want to set up a mock. So with mock.patch. And we'll say this is in the, so you always want to, so patching, if you've never dealt with patching before, patching, since Python is such a dynamic language, you can, when it's running, replace a function with some other kind of function or anything you want really, and do whatever you want. And it's just so dynamic. It allows for all these things. And so what a patch is going to do is it's going to replace the function that is in the module where you want to call it with a fake version. And that fake version, the name mock is kind of used loosely here. Different languages will be much more specific in their language of whether it's a stub or a fake, or there's a bunch of stuff in there. But in my opinion, all of those names are kind of meaningless. Who cares? It's just mocking out behavior. From that mock, it is just measuring what's calling it. And this is good for multiple reasons, actually. It's good because we're not accidentally trying to send email. I have other protections in place so that my test suite is never going to really call SendGrid and send real emails. That's not what it's going to do. But I just want to be extra cognizant that that's not going to happen. So mocking out SendMail in that regard is also a benefit. So whenever you mock something, you want to mock the location where you import it, not where it's defined. So we wouldn't want to put, what's it called? What's the import path? We wouldn't want to say mock patch Django core mail SendMail. That would be, this is the incorrect way to mock. Don't do this. What instead we want to do is where we actually did the import at that particular call site. And that's important because if you mock out SendMail where it's defined, you're actually like mocking out the behavior kind of globally in the system, which can have some negative side effects of maybe not SendMail's case, but other common functions. You could have code interactions that you don't expect. So the rule of thumb is always mock in the most specific thing you can get to, which in this case is the referrals command area. So we want to put in homeschool, referrals. Now we have to go all the way down there. So it's management commands and send referrals, and then SendMail is going to be at the module level scope in there, and that's what we want to do. And then we also want to do auto spec. This is an extra thing. Auto spec equal to true. All right, so what's the deal with this auto spec thing? Auto spec is the mock module has an ability to inspect what is the interface for this particular function or object that it's going to be replacing. And the benefit of doing that is that mock it's not actually the thing, right? So we need to make it, we would like it to behave like the thing. So for instance, if we were mocking out a function that took 2 arguments and we only passed it in 1 argument, if you didn't use auto spec, your test would pass. Even though you called it wrong, it would pass. But when you turn on auto spec equal true, it does an inspection of what is the specification, auto spec specification. What is this thing trying to do? How many parameters does it have? And in fact, there's actually a fancy computer science name for that. And if you didn't know, it's called the arity of, so what is the arity of a function? And so it will make sure that you're calling it correctly. So that is a really cool part of mock patching that I recommend you apply if you're using mocking. So now that we have this mock patch, we can say we have SendMail as it injects it into the test as a parameter that we can do. And then we can do from here, we can do the SendMail call count is equal, we expect it to be equal to 2. And we can get more specific about what it's being called with. We might actually want to in a separate test. But for this happy path test, my goal is, did you loop over email referrals, call SendMail, and then change the status of that referral to a sent status? That's the goal. Okay. So I think we are positioned with our test to actually get going. Boop, 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 boop. And it's okay. Let's actually, I just blazed through that, and that's my fault. So it's complaining that when it's trying to set up its mock, it's saying you don't have a SendMail attribute in this module. And it's true, we don't. We haven't put that in yet. So we need to come back over here, and we need to get it from the right place. This is something important. We gotta get the import path right. So from Django core mail, import SendMail. That's what we need. And now we want to ultimately call it in here. So right now, this will make that attribute error it'll make that go away, but it's not going to make this warning go away from my editor, which is saying you're not using this yet. Because it's true, we're not. Okay, so now we're at the actual assertions, and you can see it's reporting 0 when it should be reporting not 0, it should be reporting 2. Let's come down into the handle method. And now we can come into this area. We can say, we'll give it a good name. We'll say pending referrals. And we'll do referral.objects.filter with the status of referral.status.pending. So that's the query set that we want to get. Now, so far we have not brought in the actual referral model, so we need to do that next. So we'll say from homeschool, referrals, models, import referral. Now we've got that, and now the pending variable is not used. So at this stage, we're ready to start processing. Again, I'm deliberately picking a dumb version here. And the dumb version is just looping over this. There are fancier ways that you could do this. You could, if you had a background task setup, for example, let's imagine we've got a background task setup. The most common ones like celery, but there are others. And the way these things typically work is you have some kind of tool to like kick off a task. And that task will be then put in some kind of queue, a message broker. And there will be a process that's like asking the queue, what should I work on? What should I work on? What should I work on? And just doing that over and over again. And so you could have a task that starts off and gets all of the pending referrals. And instead of doing them all at once and having that problem that I talked about earlier with where if one of them fails, then all of the rest of them are done. Instead, you could have the task that aggregates them all together and fires off other tasks to handle them one at a time. And that gives you some additional robustness that if one of them fails, well, it doesn't mean like if you had 15 others that were pending, those 14 might be fine in the total count. But I don't think that we need any of that kind of complexity. So here we're just going to loop directly over the referrals that it finds. So let's give this a little breathing room. There's no reason to have all this be super stuffy. And then we're going to do a for loop that says for referral in pending referrals. And it's at this line that it will do the actual query. Before it was a query set, but as soon as it tries to do iteration, it's going to say, I don't have that data. It's going to go out to the database. And so we'll have a referral. And we need to actually call SendMail. And so we're going to put in some junk right now just to actually, before we even get to that, let's get through the first assertion and then we'll get to the SendMail part after this. Let's assume that this passes. So we want to say referral dot status is equal to referral status sent. So we're setting the status and then we're going to save it with a save call. So this is inefficient, wildly inefficient, because we're doing essentially updates on the database in a loop. But again, you always need to think about how bad is this going to be? If I had 1 million records to be, this would be a terrible idea. because there'd be a million updates that are happening in a loop you'd like hammer your database. In my case, there are maybe going to be 2 referrals on a super good day because I don't have a lot of usage on the system yet. And so I will monitor this over time, and I can go into the Django admin and I can see how many referrals there are and get a sense of this, but it's just not going to be an issue for my use case. So you always have to think about that and keep the complexity of your solution appropriate to the size of your problem. If you're looking at this and you're like, man, this guy's an idiot. He's like doing stuff in a loop and he realizes he's going on the database. Yes, I do, but that's okay in the circumstance, in my opinion. Okay, so now we're doing nothing but saving the status or changing the status to sent and doing a save. That will accomplish the first assert. So this should pass the first assert because now there are 2 referral objects, the 2 that we created. They switched over from the pending status and they switched to the sent status because we called save on them. So now we need to actually call SendMail. And this is where we need to use our heads a little bit more. And I also need to check on the Django documentations for SendMail. So let's do that. Because I want to know if the call is successful or not. I think this is the other thing to observe about this is a synchronous call. But again, it's running in the background. So that's not a bad thing because it's not like we're blocking any user from doing stuff here. But I think I want to see if there's any kind of return of if the email, if it was successful or not. I honestly don't know. So let's check it out. The return value will be the number of successfully delivered messages. Okay, we're going to do this one at a time, and it's important to do them one at a time for a very good reason, I think. Well, we can check. In this example that they give us, they show, who it's from, and then this list of 2, which is the 4th argument. And so 1, 2, 3, 4 recipient list. Okay. A list of strings, each an email address. Each member of recipient list will receive the other recipients in the to field. So pay attention to that. So let's say I had 10 pending referrals because I was super busy. If I call SendMail once on all of those emails and just pass in a list of recipients, well, guess what? Now I've referred all these random people who almost certainly don't know each other. I mean, I guess there's a chance of one person went to his or her contact list and got all of her friends that happen to be in the same group. So there's a chance that people might know each other, but this is a really bad thing. Like from a privacy perspective, you do not want to be sending individual emails from a service or to a group with the same to address. Like, I'm sure I was actually on a thread this week where I went to an event this evening, actually. It was a local networking event, and the email to everybody who's going to go was not BCC. So I saw the email address of everybody who was sent to this event. Thankfully, it's a good group of people that I don't think anything nefarious is going to come from it, but part of me was like, man, that was not the appropriate way to handle that. And it was made even worse because somebody did a reply all, and I got this random response from somebody about the event. Anyway, that's an aside. But the point is, we're going to call SendMail multiple times so that each referral will go out separately and not be connected in any way with certainty. So we need to do what? We need to give it a subject and a message. How are we going to do this? We got message and we've got HTML message. So this starts to get into the fun complexities of email. Email is kind of a nightmare on the web. It's like, imagine a browser from 15 years ago, and that's the kind of the quality of HTML support that you have. It's really not great. So on top of that, you can also have people that don't like to get HTML emails. They prefer just to get text emails. So typically when you design emails, you have to design a text version and you have to design an HTML version. We're going to punt on all of that initially. We're just trying to get some parameters in here, and then we can come back in and fill in the actual emails that are there. So let's just call it with SendMail, and we'll say the subject, what should we say? A friend has invited you to try School Desk, which is the name of the product. All right. So that's the subject. And then the next thing is the message. This is the message. I'm going to deliberately leave this with just kind of a placeholder. And I want to get, there is an email address that I have defined that is kind of there's a no reply email address, I believe, basically, that I set up, but just to point people like, hey, don't respond to this because it's not going to do you any good. There's also this default from email. Did I define that, or is that part of a Django thing? I think it's a Django thing. But we still want to supply it ourselves deliberately. Like, I think there's a way. Oh, here we go. A string, if none, Django will use the value of the default from email. Okay, well, do I want to call it that way, or is that going to look super weird? Because if I do that, all right, how's this going to look? So we can say from email equal none. So that's going to get that default behavior. But then for the rest of these, then we'll have to do keyword arguments if we want to do it right. Am I spelling that wrong? What am I doing? Recipient. And we want to use the referral email attribute. So that's what it's going to be in the list. It's going to be a list of 1. And then we want to say, oh, what is the fail silently? Fail silently defaults to false. Good. We want it to be loud and angry when it fails. And that'll be probably a prompt for me to add better error handling in there. So there's a chance that, you know, SendGrid is down and it doesn't work, and it doesn't go out. But I think I'm going to leave it like that for now and just deal with the making it more robust in the future, because I don't want to think too much about this. So we've got the recipient list, and the last thing we need is the HTML message. And that's going to be, this is the HTML message. Somewhere along the way, I goofed this up. Oh, I'm using single quote. There we go. Okay, so black reformatted that all. So here's the subject. And just to be, since there are so many parameters, why don't we just use keyword arguments for the whole thing? Subject is equal to this, and then we'll say message is equal to this. That makes it keyword arguments all the way down. It's very clear of what everything is happening. We don't have to do this, but now I'm being explicit. Alternatively, I could have extracted this string into a variable called subject and then said, you know, SendMail subject. That would be another way to handle this. But I think that since the effect is the same and it's a short message, I'm okay with this. This is going to get more complicated with the message and the HTML message later. We're probably going to do some kind of template rendering on that. We'll get to that in a minute. So we'll also at this point do a call. We'll do send count plus equal SendMail. So if this is successful, it should add 1 to our sent count, which will then go into the message at the bottom. I think that's it. At this point, the test should pass, I hope. Great, it does. Okay, what's next? Part of me is like, well, this is simple and it's done. So let's just move on to the design. And I think that may actually be, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I'm failing to consider here. Because when we're done with this all, we're going to take it and we're going to hook it into the scheduler in Heroku, which just means calling manage.py send referrals. In fact, we can test this out now. Is that true? I'm going to switch it to a secret mode for a minute. And because there's some settings I need to check on. I'll be right back with you. So I'll talk you through it. Why am I doing this? I have the setup of my environment so that it will try to use a console backend. And I was just verifying that. And it's defined in an email backend setting in my .env file. But that .env file also has a bunch of secrets, which I can't show you. So I am looking at it right now and confirming that it will use the console backend. So what's going to happen, let me bring the screen back. What's going to happen is what we should see is some sending of referrals. Let's go to the site and we'll go to the Django admin, which I don't know why it just logged me out. I'll log back in. I think the test account is this. Some password. Okay. And we'll come down to the admin and look at the list of referrals. So this is actually a pretty good use case. We've got 2 referrals ready to go. They're both in a pending state. And yeah, I think so. What I think we'll see is if we try and run the command, should use the console backend. And the console backend just means it's going to write the output of what it would have sent as email to standard out. So with any luck, that data will appear with the command execution, and it will see exactly what we expect to see. So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to run manage send referrals. And we're going to simulate being the Heroku scheduler. This is what I'm going to put into the Heroku scheduler tooling. There's a place where you can go add these and set some time frequency. That's something I won't do on the stream because I don't think there's anything secret there, but it's kind of boring. It's just basically filling in a web form that takes exactly this output. Like I'm not changing anything from what I put in there. It asks you for a command that it can run in the context of the Heroku app, and this was the command. And then it asks you for a cron schedule, which is the timing that it would run on. So you're not missing a whole lot by me not showing you that part. So we're going to run this. I expect to see a message saying it's looking for referrals. I expect to see 2 blocks of email content output, and then I expect to see the final line that says sent 2 referrals. Let's see if it works. It's firing up. There's the message, fetch the pending referrals. Here is message number 1. It's from no reply at the school desk, which is good. This one's going to someone at somewhere, which is the first referral. And there, this only 1? Oh, it only said 1. Why'd you only send 1? That's not cool. What happened? All right. Let's go figure it out. What the heck happened? There were definitely 2 referrals on this page. They both got sent. Huh? Something wonky just went down. Maybe. Are the referrals the same address? Still doesn't make sense to me. What? Okay. Let's dig in. See what happened. This is someone at somewhere. Where's this one to? If it's also someone at somewhere that might... Oh, how did I get away with that? That's not good. rats. Okay. I see the problem. So let's go to back to the referral model. Okay. So that first referral, I actually, I kind of kicked myself last time I did the stream, and here it is biting me. When I initially designed the referral model, I forgot to include the email field, which was dumb. And I came back and added it in the next stream, but I must have done this first referral with that old model design. And it just, like, if I try and save this right now, it's going to say, like, this field's required. So it even knows that this data is not good anymore. So that explains why we only saw one. So I'm gonna synthesize it like, hey, I'm gonna pretend we never sent this. So let's go back to number 2. Let's switch it back to pending and save that one. And then we'll go back to number 1 and we'll say hello at somewhere.com. Save that. So this should be more accurate now. Oh, we also need to put that in a pending. And then we'll synthesize this test again, because I really want to see. I want to prove that it does actually. I mean, I'm 99% sure that it's right, but that was a weird behavior. I'm surprised that it surprised me on Django's behavior in that part, because it did. We have fail silently equal to false, and I would think that if you don't provide a recipient, that's a failure. I don't know. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of failure. So we have the data set up properly this time, I believe, and we're going to call the same command again. This time I expect to see 2 of these like gnarly chunks of blocks. This is exactly the format of the email standard. So this is actually how it would go out, I believe, if it was real stuff that you'd send over the email protocol, like SMTP. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an email expert, but it looks like that would be the format if I was to guess. So let's try running it again. Here we go. Now we got it. So we got the fetch line. Here's the actual email that got sent. There's the text version. You can see text plain. Here's the HTML version. You can see the content type is HTML. Then we've got, and that one went to hello at somewhere, which was the first referral. And then we've got the second referral that goes to someone at somewhere with the same message. And at the bottom it says sent 2 referrals. Great. So I think we're at a stage where we can commit this work. Let's see. We fixed that test string. We added the command. We tested the command. Oh, let's get that other bit in there. Is some work that I was not doing in this stream. I was doing it as a different project. So git restore homeschool students. Oh, come on. Oh, I forgot staged. Git has changed some of their commands. I think they've tried to make it friendlier, but my brain is like, I remember the old prompt. It was like git checkout with -- or something. I don't remember it all. Okay, so this to do that we don't actually need in there, we will keep separate, and don't worry about that. That's just something else I was working on. So now we can check it out. Whoops! Actually, before we do that, let's make sure it's covered. I'm pretty sure it is, but worth checking. If I don't and I push it up to GitHub, it's going to fail because my coverage check expects to have 100% test coverage for this project. Although our one happy path test did all of the things, so I think I'm pretty sure it will work out, but we should verify. So I'll save myself the trouble later. Let's think about what we need to do next and how we want to approach it. So like I said in this project, I have only had to use I've only had to override existing emails. So for example, I've used Django All-Auth, and when you sign up for the application, there is an email confirmation step that it expects you to confirm your email address. Oh, good, 100% coverage. And because of that, the use of Django All-Auth, I didn't actually have to send the actual email. That's the confirmation email. I just had to style it and put my own words in there, which meant finding in Django All-Auth, which template that I needed to override. So here's a different story where I am now creating a totally new referral email that doesn't exist. There's no third-party thing that it's coming from. So if I want to have the email content be stored in a template, then I need to handle that myself. So we'll get into that in a minute. Before we do that, though, let's commit this thing. So add management command to send pending referrals. That's what we're doing here. And does this fix an issue, or is it? No, we're not done yet. This is for number 399. But we're not actually fixing it yet. So this is just the appropriate association, but we're not done. So let's take a look at how some other applications have done this. There might be some lessons to learn. I don't want to get too deep in this and realize that was a dumb way to do it if there are other things that we can learn from. I had up earlier, where'd it go? No, that's the milestone. Maybe I closed it. Shoot. All right. So let's search for All-Auth, and we want to go to the actual repository. And I think what I was looking for was one of the emails that I sent out, and how does it get sent out? So there was in fact, I think there was another one that I could search for. Verification. I think we can search maybe for one of these and see if it comes up or not. These are all text. That's weird. Why are they all text? Strange. Okay. Email confirmation. Oh, this might not be a good example. We'll try. So we want to find it in the code. There's the file here. Maybe it's not referenced. It's referenced in all these PO files, which are translation things. But let's try searching for, it looks like it's something that's reused, and maybe the real reference is this confirmation sign up message. Okay. Sometimes it's difficult. All right. Let's back up. Let's try just digging into some of the area of the account stuff and see what we come up with. Where would I be if I were this? Oh, geez. Better yet, let's see if there's an example of a call to SendMail. That would be a smarter thing to do. Now, we were close. Account adapter. SendMail. So they've got this render mail function that they've defined. So you can see there's actually quite a bit going on in here for doing this. Now this is a really robust third-party extension, so they have to handle a lot more craziness that might happen from people who use stuff in a weird way. But there's probably some stuff that we could take from this. Render mail. So they build, looks like they're building a message and they're calling send, which is a different kind of API. So let's maybe find out if this is the way, because I think, yeah. So we may not want to use the SendMail function. It may be better to call email message. I'm not really sure. Let's see why they did that. So they can either make a multi-part alternative, which is saying the HTML version, and do that, and then call this send function, or they create just an HTML version. Okay. Well, I have a different context here. We know for a fact that I'm planning to send both versions, so I don't think I need to use this more advanced classes. And I'm trying to figure out why. Oh, okay. There are features that are part of email message that are not available through SendMail. BCC, which we don't care about. File attachments, we don't care about. Multi-part email. Why doesn't, I thought that it said that an HTML would make it multi-part automatically. Did it not? Let's go back and look. Yeah, it'll make it multi-part. And we saw that when we saw the console output, right? That was why it showed content type text, content type HTML. So we can, if we can get to the data together to pass in the text and the HTML versions, then we should be good. So let's see if we can learn from that project of how did they get that together? Where did that come from? So they are calling render to string, passing a template name, context, and request, and then stripping that off. Aha, and then they do it over on a loop. Why did they do it that way? Curious. So they put the responses in a dictionary. Maybe because this is a loop and it's the same thing, and they wanted to pass in the same template name and the same context. It seems a little complex to me, but again, to each their own. I'm not even going to check for an accept because I'm just going to trust that I'm writing the extension, the template that I expect to exist, and I don't want to catch this. That's kind of weird. So let's figure out a place to put the two emails and then render them to the string. And yeah, I think that might be it. So in fact, I forget. Render to Django render to string. To string. I don't know if it requires a request. That would be unfortunate. Render to string. An optional request. Okay, so we don't need to pass in a request. We just need a template name, sorry, and the context, the data to put into the template. And then the rest is up to us. So let's do this. Where is render to string defined? You can learn. So I learned this trick from listening to somebody, I think it was a Django podcast, but if you hover over the little paragraph permalink marker, you can see that this is coming from Django template loader render to string. Although I guess we could have also learned that from up here. Render to string is in here. There it is, from Django template loader render to string. And there's probably an argument for extracting email handling if I have a bunch of it, but I'm not going to do that right now. I think it's too early to make some like email system within the application. So it's okay for me at this stage to put it into the actual command. So we'll say from Django template loader import render to string. That's not going to be used yet. Let's go back up to that test that we had earlier. This will be useful. So now this is going to be able to check us, and it should still pass right now because we're not calling anything yet, but we'll call it with some data that I expect to fail, and then we'll work on that template until it's better. So we need to call this with, we don't want this as a message. We want to say render to string, and I'm going to pass in template name. So that's going to be in the template section. I'm going to create a referrals area, and I'm going to create an email directory in here, and we'll say, should I call it emails? Does it matter? There could be multiple. Let's call it emails. And say send referral. And this will be the TXT version. This will be the text email. And we also need to pass in a context, which doesn't exist yet. And then we need a comma. Okay. Context doesn't exist. If we run this, that should fail with a name error. Yep. So let's put a context. Context. We're going to want to, what do we want to put in here? I guess we could use the email address of the referring user. Maybe we don't need anything. Let's see if we can just get away with nothing for now. So now when we try to run it, it's going to give a template error failure because the template doesn't exist. The template does not exist, so we need to go create that template. So let's go over to templates, and 500 should be fine as a starting point. So we need to create a new directory, which we'll call referrals. Come in here, we'll create another directory called emails, and then we will create a file called sendreferral.txt. Okay, just by saving that, this test is going to pass now. So that's both good and bad, because it just means that now we aren't sending anything in that text email. It's literally an empty email. But it's a start. So here's the text version. I frankly don't want to spend a ton of time on the text version because I don't think that most users use text emails, or it's a rare bunch. But we'll still put a message in here. What do we want to say? Hello, with some exclamation, I guess. A friend using school desk would friend using school desk recommends you give it a try. Let's not beat them over with too many exclamation points. Let's just say hello. Hello, a friend using school desk recommends you give it a try. And then this is the part about text emails that I don't like, is you have to format them in a not ideal way. So we could say, I mean, this is a Django template, so we could do something like spaceless, maybe that's the way to do this. Because if I don't, here's what I'm getting at. It's like I could write this template, but then I have to put all of this stuff on a single line, and it's gonna look. It's not gonna look like I want it to. But that's okay. That's just what we're gonna deal with. We'll just deal with the simple version. If I get annoyed by it later, I can fix it up. Checkout. And here's where we put in a URL route. So this is actually going to be template logic. So URL, what's the register command? Ooh. Sign up, right? Account sign up. Okay. Account sign up. To sign up for your free trial. Yeah. Is this good? Let's make this a separate kind of like call to action. So that'll send them to the sign up page. Oh, no, it won't. Oh, stuff is annoying. Okay. Why did I say no, it won't? This will only give the relative URL. If we want to actually include the domain name, we have to do more. All right, let's look at, I think I've done this in the past with some other area. Let's look at one of those other areas. So let's bring up a different template with the account. Whoops, where'd it go? Apparently I build out. Template, account. Are there any links in here? Oh, that's not even that's a regular template. Email. Oh, this one just calls it email. All right, that inconsistency is gonna drive me crazy later. So we'll rename the directory in a second. Let's look at the confirmation page. Ah, shoot. I injected that as a URL. Phooey. Okay, let's go one more layer and find activate URL and see how I did that. Oh, that's why, because it's coming from Django all-auth. I didn't do it at all. It came from all-auth. Well, let's see what all-auth did. We have that repository up. We can totally view that. So we want to find the activate URL, where that's defined in Python code, and how they did it, because there's probably something to learn there. Get activate URL. This is the get email confirmation. So it does a reverse, which I expect, and then it does build. Oh, but it passes in a request object. Dang it. Because from the request object, they can get a bunch of stuff. They can get out the protocol, they can get out all these different things. Well, that's frustrating. I'm going to punt on this one. We've been going for nearly an hour and a half. And so we're I'm not going to worry about the URL part right now. I will leave in a to-do in the code to remind myself to do it, but I'm not going to bore you with like me digging in to find out where that is. In all likelihood, what's going to end up happening is I won't end up putting it inside of the template because I would have to duplicate the logic in here. So I'll probably put it into the context just like Django all-auth did and pass it into the context and then have it just be rendered out directly there. So we want to say to do pass in full URL to account sign up. All right, so that'll be that there. And then we'll check out what else do I want to say? I think I'm kind of like running out of steam mentally and not writing my best copy. And so since these are things that are like I actually want people to try, I think I'm not going to just like slam through some kind of half-baked email. So we'll call it quits here. But the idea, I hope I've conveyed the way to do this. In this circumstance, we're going to call render to string on multiple things. And in fact, I don't like the fact that I put a full function call there. I think that looks kind of not so good. So what I'll do is I'll say we will take all this stuff out and come on. We'll take all that stuff out. We'll put it into a variable called text message. We'll make sure that it's not a single element like that. And then we're going to add text message here to keep the actual call to SendMail nice and crisp. Man, that's a bummer. It's very long. Oh well. What can you do? Not everything can be perfect, but whatever. Similarly, we will call, let's go ahead and at least get you as far as like what I would have done for both of these. We can also duplicate this, change it to HTML message, change the extension to HTML, which remember doesn't exist. And then we're going to say HTML message here. Now the HTML template is going to be more involved because it's HTML. But if we try and run the command again, it's going to fail with a template not found exception, right? So come back over here and I'll come up and I'll say, I'll make an empty file and send referral HTML. Now while I'm thinking about it, well, it should pass at this point, even though it's empty. It needs to be filled in, but it works. Both things got rendered and then it's all good. Let's rename this directory to be email, because that lines up with the way allauth did it. And since allauth was first, we'll just be consistent. So my app will use email for everything. Maybe that'll drive me crazy in the future. I don't know, but it's fine for now. Because I did that, I need to change these two paths because they're now wrong. And we can change this. All right, there's maybe like one more thing that we can do to get this on one line. So we'll say template is equal to referrals email send referral. We'll just call it like that. And then we can change this to an F string. And this will make it a lot shorter and hopefully fit back on a single line. So we get template. And now we can reuse the same thing. Delete this. Change this to HTML. And boom, nice and short. That seems much better. Again, the test should still pass. We're just kind of moving variables around. So that's all good. So what's left, what I'll probably do off stream, or maybe next time when I just have more brain power, it's getting late my time, is finish the content of the send referral email. And it kind of wraps up the feature, frankly. So what that will do, so to finish out this whole process, I'll walk you through this because I don't know how much of this I'll do on stream. I'll finish out these emails. The other thing I can do is in my settings file, project settings, I have this thing right here. So I have an email testing environment variable. So I can run this system with this email testing environment variable. All I have to do is add an example. So email testing, there's probably even, I can just put something there that makes it exist, and it will run the settings file with it on. And what that will do is it's going to try and hook up to a locally running email backend. And so what I've done in the past was I used a tool called MailHog. Here it is. I think that's it. Yep. I don't remember it being capitalized like that, but you can run MailHog. And what MailHog does is it acts as like an SMTP sync. So it will receive any email that's sent to it. So I was using the console backend earlier, but with that setting that I was just showing you of email testing, it overrides the console backend and it says use the SMTP backend. And then it gives the host and the port, which will map up with MailHog. And so MailHog is listening for emails on this address, but I can then also go and, on this address with this port 1025, but I can also go into my browser and see this MailHog interface. And this is a quick, easy way to see an email-like environment. It's got some disadvantages because it is just a browser, and as I said earlier in the stream, emails in some clients are like way behind in terms of standards. So if you try and make too modern of a template, it might look okay in MailHog, but would look like trash on some of these other clients. So you need to be really careful with using a tool like this, but it can at least give you like a "are you even close" kind of feeling. And I've used it on previous streams and would use it on this too. So once I get the HTML email design where I like it, I would come over to here, I would run the command and test that actual sending to see, hey, does this output look like I want? Does it have the to and from? We've already verified that through the console, but does it have that stuff? Can I see the text version? Can I see the HTML version? Do they look okay? Does everything seem to fit together? And that's how I would actually finish out the feature itself. Once that feature is done, I will go over to the Heroku scheduler, as I talked about. I will set up the send referrals command so that it fits into the scheduler and fits at a timing of my choosing, which will probably just be every 6 hours or so, because I don't get a lot of traffic on this site right now, and so I don't imagine this feature being wildly popular in the near future. Once that is in place, I can go back through and work on the documentation for this application. So there's two levels of documentation that I've got in mind. There's the actual documentation that I want to put within the official docs of the product to describe how does this process work. How much is somebody going to get off as why would anybody do a referral? And that's what I want to put there. And then I have an actual product blog as well that it can explain, it kind of announces features, and I can use that announcement. There's actually a built-in announcement system into the app that I can pop up on some user's screen so that they can see, hey, there's this new thing you can go read about of a new feature that we're adding. And then that can prompt existing users to use the referral system if they so choose. So that's the vision behind actually getting this over the finish line, and that's what these remaining 3 pieces are going to be. We may get to some more of that on the stream, or we might come back next week and you might find out that I did all of that and I'm done. Frankly, at this point in my brain, I think that's where I want to be. I want to get this done and stop thinking about it. If that's the case, we'll move on to whatever's left on the product roadmap. There's other stuff that I want to do. There's other things that have been reported by customers. There's plenty of things that are to do, and we'll get into some of that. That's the plan. So thank you for joining in. I'll take this content as usual and post it up on YouTube. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give me a follow here on Twitch, or if you are catching this over on YouTube, like, subscribe, whatever. Leave comments if you got them. I'm happy to answer questions as you might have them, and I do my best to respond to everything that I can. So thank you for your attention. Hopefully you'll learn something this evening, and I hope you all have a great evening. Take care.